Welcome if you dare. You've stepped into a world where shadows whisper, where every creak in the floor holds a secret. And tonight, you're about to hear a story that will haunt your dreams. Before we begin, make sure you're not alone, or you're ready to uncover what really happened in today's story. Don't forget to subscribe if you're brave enough, because what lurks in this channel is far more terrifying. Let's begin. The rain pounded against the windows of Margaret Harvey's childhood home, now owned by her ever-curious but fiercely independent grandmother, Ethel. The grand old house, nestled at the outskirts of a fading town, was a monument to history's long forgotten, housing stories within its weathered walls. Margaret had come to visit her grandmother for a quiet weekend, but what she found was far from the tranquility she had expected. "Margaret, come here. You must see this." Ethel's voice echoed with a blend of excitement and urgency from the house's grand old library. Margaret, brushing the raindrops off her coat, made her way to the library, where rows of gilded spines glimmered dimly in the evening light. Her grandmother stood at a table cluttered with tomes and scrolls, holding a book that seemed to draw the dull light into it, casting no reflection. "What did you find, Grandma?" Margaret asked, intrigued by the glimmer in Ethel's eyes. Ethel opened the book with gentle reverence. It was tucked away in the corner of the top shelf where those cobwebs collected. Must have been hiding there for decades. "Look at this." Margaret peered over Ethel's shoulder. The pages were yellowed with age, covered in script that seemed to shift and twist under the gaze. "What language is this?" she mused aloud. Ethel's fingers traced the symbols. "I have no idea. There's a sort of beauty to it, isn't there?" As if in response to her words, the room's lights flickered. Ethel huffed at the inconvenience, but Margaret's heart skipped a beat. "Did you see that? It's probably just a storm," Ethel said dismissively, her attention returning to the book. Yet, that night, the house was anything but quiet. A low hum seemed to emanate from the walls, a rhythm that seeped into dreams and distorted reality. Margaret awoke to a whisper, words not spoken in any human tongue. Morning arrived with a semblance of normalcy. The rain had paused, leaving the garden glistening under a gray canopy. Ethel was already up, a generous breakfast spread on the table. "I couldn't sleep after that book," she confessed. "Something about it is unsettling." Margaret nodded. "I heard whispers. Probably a dream, but still." As they ate, small occurrences started dotting their routine. A picture frame fell without provocation. The old grandfather clock chimed unexpectedly. Then, the lights, though it was broad daylight, blinked ominously. "Let's have another look at that book," Margaret suggested, trying to shake off an encroaching dread. Back in the library, the book lay innocuously where they left it. Yet, opening it again, Ethel and Margaret found the pages had changed. The writing now shimmered like heat over asphalt, patterns morphing into shapes that teased the imagination. Ethel flipped a page, and the candle on the table sputtered and died, though there was no breeze. "This is more than just an old book." Margaret hesitated, then reached for it, her fingers grazing the leathery cover. A shiver crept down her spine, part fear, part inexplicable thrill. Could it be cursed? Ethel scoffed nervously, or maybe enchanted. But whatever it is, there's no denying it's doing something to the house. The afternoon dragged on, fraught with tension. More strange occurrences ensued. A chair scraped against the floor on its own. Shadows shifted in the corner of the eye. The book seemed to pulse with sinister allure. "I've been thinking about that dream," Margaret said, pacing. "The whispers. Do you think we could be unlocking something?" Ethel didn't respond immediately, studying the book once more. "It doesn't want to remain hidden," she finally said, almost as if it seeks presence. Margaret finished, realization dawning. "It wants us to see to know. That night, deliberate in its eeriness, unfolded predictably unpredicted. Floors creaked as if bearing unseen footsteps. Margaret, unable to sleep, wandered into the library by instinct. Ethel sat there, determined, with a collection of old notes and articles she'd uncovered. Mag, there's something about an author gone mad, vanishing after writing his last and supposedly cursed book. Margaret stared at the open pages. What if we tried to destroy it? Ethel shook her head. We've opened it. I think it's beyond that now. Part of the house almost. We need to understand it together. Through the night, guided by flickering candlelight, they began translating, unraveling the mystery word by word. A tale of forgotten realms, of bindings stronger than fate itself. Dawn broke with clarity. It's about learning its truths. Ethel mused over her notes. Perhaps we've been fearing shadows. They closed the book with newfound understanding. The whispers faded. The pace of the shadows ebbed. The presence, acknowledged, receded. Margaret smiled softly. Maybe he wasn't cursed, she muttered. Ethel nodded, toying with the spine lovingly. Perhaps it just needed to be heard, to share its story much like the writer. And with the story laid bare, the house sighed in relief, resting once more in history's cradle. As the sun climbed higher, casting warmth over the dewy garden, Margaret and Ethel sat on the porch, sipping tea and discussing their newfound understanding of the mysterious book. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the atmosphere felt lighter, as if the house itself was relieved. I think we should research more about the author, Margaret said, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Maybe there's more to his story than just the book. Ethel nodded, her eyes twinkling with agreement. I've already started looking into it. I found a mention of a diary, supposedly written by the author himself. It's said to be hidden somewhere in the house. Margaret's eyes widened with excitement. Let's find it, together. They embarked on a treasure hunt, searching every nook and cranny of the old house. After hours of searching, they finally found a hidden compartment in the attic, containing a leather-bound diary. As they began to read the diary, they discovered the author's dark past and the inspiration behind the mysterious book. The author's name was Malcolm, and he had been obsessed with the supernatural and the occult. He had spent years researching and experimenting, delving deeper into the mysteries of the unknown. The diary revealed that Malcolm had made a pact with a malevolent entity, trading his sanity for knowledge and power. The mysterious book was the culmination of his research, a key to unlocking the secrets of the supernatural. Margaret and Ethel realized that the book's power was real, and that they had unknowingly unleashed it when they opened the book. But instead of fearing the book, they felt a sense of responsibility, knowing that they had to understand and contain its power. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the house, Margaret and Ethel sat in the library, surrounded by the trappings of their research. They knew that their journey was far from over, but they were determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. We have to be careful, Ethel said, her voice barely above a whisper. We don't know what we're dealing with. Margaret nodded, her eyes locked on the book. We'll figure it out, Grandma, together. And with that, they began their journey into the unknown, armed with knowledge, determination, and a sense of adventure. The house, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become a gateway to discovery, and Margaret and Ethel were ready to face whatever lay ahead. As the night wore on, Margaret and Ethel delved deeper into the mysteries of the book and the diary. They discovered that Malcolm's pact with the entity had come at a terrible cost, and that the book was a key to unlocking not only knowledge, but also the entity's power. Suddenly, the lights in the library began to flicker, and the air grew colder. Margaret and Ethel felt a presence in the room, as if the entity was watching them. We have to be careful, Ethel whispered. We don't know what we're dealing with. Margaret nodded, her heart racing with excitement and fear. Let's try to communicate with it, she suggested. Ethel hesitated, but Margaret's curiosity got the better of her. They began to read from the book, using the words to try and communicate with the entity. As they read, the room grew darker, and the presence grew stronger. Margaret and Ethel felt themselves being drawn into a world beyond their own, a world of ancient knowledge and forbidden power. Suddenly, the lights went out, and the room was plunged into darkness. Margaret and Ethel were alone, surrounded by the oppressive silence. But then, a voice spoke to them, echoing in their minds. It was Malcolm, or rather, his spirit, trapped between worlds. "Welcome, seekers of knowledge," the voice said. "I have been waiting for you. Are you prepared to pay the price?" Margaret and Ethel exchanged a nervous glance. They knew that they had to be careful, but they also knew that they couldn't turn back now. "What do you want from us?" Margaret asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I want you to understand," the voice replied. "I want you to see the truth, to know the secrets that lie beyond the veil. But be warned, the price is steep, and the consequences are dire." Margaret and Ethel looked at each other, and without a word, they knew what they had to do. They were in this together, and they would face whatever lay ahead, side by side. "Let's do it," Margaret said, her voice firm. "Let's do it," Ethel echoed, her eyes shining with determination. And with that, they embarked on a journey that would change their lives forever. A journey into the unknown, where the boundaries between reality and the supernatural were blurred, and the price of knowledge was higher than they could ever imagine. As they continued on their journey, Margaret and Ethel found themselves in a world beyond their own, a world where the laws of physics were twisted and distorted. They saw visions of ancient civilizations, of mysterious rituals, and forbidden knowledge. The voice of Malcolm guided them, explaining the secrets of the universe and the nature of reality. Margaret and Ethel listened, entranced, as the secrets were revealed to them. But with each new revelation, they felt the weight of the price they would have to pay. They knew that they were being changed, transformed by the knowledge they were gaining. As they journeyed deeper into the unknown, they encountered strange creatures and beings, some of which seemed benevolent, while others seemed malevolent. They began to realize that the universe was not as they had thought, and that there were forces beyond human control. Despite the risks, Margaret and Ethel pressed on, driven by their curiosity and determination. They knew that they had to see this through, no matter the cost. Finally, they reached the heart of the mystery, the source of the power that Malcolm had sought. It was a place of immense energy, a place where the fabric of reality was thinned. As they stood before the source, Margaret and Ethel felt the weight of their decision. They knew that they had to make a choice, to decide whether to take the power for themselves or to leave it behind. "What do we do?" Margaret asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We take it," Ethel replied, her eyes shining with determination. "We've come too far to turn back now." And with that, they reached out and took the power, feeling its energy coursing through them. They knew that their lives would never be the same, that they had been forever changed by the secrets they had uncovered. As they stood there, bathed in the power of the source, Margaret and Ethel felt a sense of exhilaration and fear. They knew that they had unlocked a door that would lead them to new discoveries and new challenges. And as they emerged from the world beyond, they found themselves back in the library, the book lying closed on the table. But they knew that they were not the same, that they had been transformed by their journey. They looked at each other and smiled, knowing that their lives would never be the same again. They had unlocked the secrets of the universe, and they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they emerged from the world beyond, Margaret and Ethel felt a sense of disorientation, as if they had been away for a lifetime. They looked around the library, taking in the familiar surroundings, but everything seemed different, as if they were seeing it for the first time. They sat down at the table, the book still lying closed before them. Margaret reached out and touched the cover, feeling a strange energy emanating from it. "It's done," Ethel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've unlocked the secrets." Margaret nodded, her eyes still fixed on the book. "But at what cost?" she asked. Ethel smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "We'll never be the same again," she said. "We've seen things that most people can't even imagine." As they sat there, trying to process what had happened, they began to feel a strange sensation, as if they were being pulled apart and put back together again. Suddenly, Margaret's eyes snapped open, and she looked at Ethel with a mixture of fear and wonder. "I can see it," she said, her voice trembling. "I can see the threads of reality, the hidden patterns and connections." Ethel's eyes widened in understanding. "You're seeing the underlying structure of the universe," she said, "the secrets that Malcolm unlocked." Margaret's eyes were wide with awe but also with fear. "What does it mean?" she asked. "What does it mean to see the world like this?" Ethel's smile was enigmatic. "It means that we have the power to shape reality itself," she said. "We have the power to create and destroy." As they sat there, contemplating the implications of their newfound abilities, the library around them began to change, the shadows shifting and the air vibrating with energy. Margaret and Ethel knew that their journey was far from over. They had unlocked the secrets of the universe, but they had also unleashed a power that could be both creative and destructive. They looked at each other and knew that they had to be careful, that they had to learn to control their newfound abilities. They knew that they had to use their power wisely, to create and not destroy. And with that, they began their new journey, a journey of discovery and creation, a journey that would take them to the limits of human potential and beyond. As they embarked on their new journey, Margaret and Ethel found themselves facing challenges they had never imagined. They had to learn to control their powers, to harness the energy of the universe and use it for good. They spent hours practicing, experimenting with their abilities, and learning to manipulate the threads of reality. They discovered that they could create new patterns, new connections, and new possibilities. But with every step forward, they also faced new challenges. They encountered beings who sought to misuse the power they had unlocked. Beings who would stop at nothing to claim the secrets of the universe for themselves. Margaret and Ethel knew that they had to be vigilant, that they had to protect the power and use it for the greater good. They formed a bond, a partnership that went beyond family ties, a bond that was forged in the fire of their experiences. Together, they traveled the world, using their powers to help those in need. They healed the sick, protected the innocent, and brought hope to those who had lost it. As they journeyed, they encountered others like themselves, others who had unlocked the secrets of the universe. They formed a community, a network of individuals who shared their knowledge and their power. And through it all, Margaret and Ethel remained at the forefront, using their abilities to shape the world and create a brighter future. Years passed, and their legend grew. People spoke of the two women who had unlocked the secrets of the universe, who had harnessed the power of creation and used it for good. And as they stood together, looking out at the world they had helped to shape, Margaret and Ethel knew that their journey had been worth it. They had unlocked the secrets of the universe, and in doing so, they had found their true purpose. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a way forward. And as the years went by, their legend continued to inspire, a testament to the power of courage, determination, and the human spirit. But as the years went by, Margaret and Ethel began to realize that their powers were not without consequence. They had changed the world, but at what cost? They had become legends, revered and feared in equal measure. Some saw them as heroes, while others saw them as a threat to the natural order of things. As they stood together, looking out at the world, they had helped to shape. Margaret and Ethel knew that they had to be mindful of the impact of their powers. They had to use their abilities wisely and ensure that they did not become a force for destruction. "We have to be careful," Ethel said, her voice low and serious. "We have to make sure that our powers are used for good and not for evil." Margaret nodded in agreement. "We have to be guardians of the universe's secrets," she said. "We have to protect them from those who would misuse them." And with that, they made a vow to each other, a vow to use their powers for the greater good, and to protect the universe from those who would seek to harm it. As they stood there, a sense of determination and purpose washed over them. They knew that their journey was far from over,